What's going on, everybody, and welcome to my video on how to run a YouTube channel. For those of you that might not already know me or might not already be subscribers to this channel, I have been on YouTube since summer of 2016. I'm closing in on 100,000 subscribers. I imagine I'll meet that goal sometime around October. And I have been full-time as a YouTuber since last September, so just short of a year. One thing that I will say right off the bat is that I do not have the correct answer for everything. I only have my experiences, my trials and tribulations, and the things that have worked for me and my channel specifically. There's a lot of things here that I think will be valuable to anybody starting a YouTube channel or growing a YouTube channel, but there's certainly some things in here that are gonna be more prevalent to movie-related channels like my own. If you're doing a makeup channel or construction video channel, obviously there's going to be some things that you're going to have to learn along the way that I have not dealt with. So with all that being said, I asked you guys on my community page for a lot of questions in regards to running a YouTube channel or questions about the YouTube channel process. And so I'm going to go through the ones that stood out to me, the one that seemed the most relevant, the ones that I could actually give a lot of context to. And the first category of questions is going to be in regards to starting a YouTube channel. What advice would you give to someone starting a channel? Well, the first advice and the most important advice that I can give is do not start a YouTube channel to make money, and do not start a YouTube channel to become famous. Are there channels out there that are talented and fortunate enough to achieve both of those things? Absolutely, there's a ton of them. But there's a lot of channels out there that unfortunately do not and probably will not. And so if you start a YouTube channel and that is your only goals is to be rich and famous, most likely you're not going to succeed at that. When you're starting a channel, it should be because it's something that you want to do. It's something that you enjoy. It's some kind of expression that you want to get out. It's some kind of a hobby or an interest that you want to discuss with other people. Something along those lines that's going to give you that creative drive, give you that motivation to have fun while starting your YouTube channel. If you start with the motivations of money or a lot of views and a lot of subscribers, you're going to get discouraged very quickly because they do not come fast and they do not come easy. And when you're starting your channel, decide very early on whether or not this is just going to be a casual hobby, something that you do in your free time for fun once in a while, or if you're actually serious about running a YouTube channel, possibly as a side hustle or eventually to be a full-time career. Because if you're just going to treat it like a hobby, there's certainly some best practices, there's certainly some things that you want to follow to make sure that your content is continuously growing and is appealing to an audience, but you don't have to put near as much time, blood, sweat, and tears into it as if somebody who is being very serious about their YouTube channel as being more than just a hobby. And if you are serious about it, at some point you have to start treating your YouTube channel like a job. You have to start treating it as something as if you're clocking in and out of a time clock. You have to keep yourself accountable. You have to make sure that you are uploading consistent quality content, that you're uploading on some kind of a reasonable frequency, not once a month or twice a year, at least maybe one video a week or 2 videos a week, whatever makes sense for you in your schedule. And I would also highly recommend that if it is possible within the genre of YouTube that you are going for, to try to establish a niche very early on. Speaking specifically on what I do, talking about movies, I tend to gravitate much more towards the horror genre and the horror community. Now, I do a lot of different things on my channel. I talk about music occasionally. Up until very recently, I used to talk about video games on this channel until I created a separate channel for that. And of course, I always talk about the other genres like action films, comic book films, crime films. But my channel has pretty much always had a solid focus on the horror genre and the horror community. And if you don't pick a niche early on, it's very hard for your channel to find its audience and to stand out amongst the millions of other channels out there trying to do exactly what you are trying to do. If you're trying to appeal to everybody by talking about everything, you're going to have a channel where you're talking about movies and you're also doing food reviews and you're doing unboxings and how-tos and DIYs and you're also doing vlogs and makeup tutorials all in the same channel. Chances are you're not going to succeed in any of those things because the person that subscribes to your channel for your movie reviews might not be interested in your food reviews or your beautification tips. There's a reason why you get construction tools from Home Depot and you get groceries from Kroger and you get a Whopper at Burger King. Now, Burger King might get crazy one day and decide to start selling lumber, and if you're in there eating, you might grab a couple of pieces on the way out, but chances are nobody's pulling over and going to Burger King for lumber. How long do your videos take to shoot and edit? Now, it really depends on the video. It depends on the scope and the size of the project. It depends on how much I want to talk about the said movie or topic that I'm discussing in the video. But on average, it takes me typically about 2 to 3 hours to do a video from start to finish. Most of my movie reviews I filmed anywhere between 12 minutes and 25 minutes, again, just depending on how much I have to say. And the editing process typically takes only about 45 minutes to an hour, unless I am going really extravagant with the bells and whistles, or I'm doing something that's more along the lines of an essay or a retrospective. Standard reviews I pretty much have down to a science. Now, when you get into ranking videos and things like 31 on 31 and those larger projects, those can take a lot longer, not only in the recording, but also especially the editing phase. And the longest that I've ever spent in the editing phase was for things like the slay lists for the Halloween and Friday the 13th franchise, where I'm literally taking clips from a dozen movies and I'm getting like 100 plus clips, 100, almost 200 clips for one of those videos, and editing and arranging all of them. Those types of videos can literally take days, if not weeks, depending on your skill level. What kind of equipment do you use and how much does it cost to start a channel? So I use quite a few different things. I have two main cameras, one of which I don't use too much anymore. This is the camera that I used for about the first 5.5 years on my channel. It's just a Canon camcorder. It cost me about $200 something. 6 years ago, back in 2016. Very good camera for what I needed it for. I recently updated to this Canon camera that I'm viewing you on right now. I'm recording on right now. I'll try to put a picture or video of this camera. It's an EOS Mark II. And I also have my webcam, this thing right here, that I use for live streams. For sound, I have this lapel mic right here. It's a Sony lapel mic. It was like 20 bucks. And I have this hand recorder. It's a Zoom H1. A lot of people use different things for sound. Sometimes they use shotgun mics. Sometimes they like the lapel mic. I like these better because they cancel out all the other noises except for my voice. For live streams, I also have this Yeti mic right here, this Yeti Blue mic, and this little sound boom that it's on. And of course, for lights and tripods, when you see my tripod, any tripod will work. I'll show a picture of the lights that I use. I tend to use box lights. I have 3. You really only need 2, but my set came with a 3rd one. And of course, as you guys know that have watched my channel for a long time, I use a green screen, and I've used many different green screens. Right now, I'm using this pull-down one. That's the most convenient for me, but there's also pop-up green screens, kind of like the visor guards that you have in your trucks. There's a bunch of different options on that front. I do all of my editing on my laptop, which is a MacBook Pro. It cost about $3,500. It is a very, very high-end laptop, but it was worth the investment for me because I use it every single day. And I also have a Shuttle Pro right here, which is quickly becoming my favorite little device that I use while editing. It's got a little dial wheel here to where when I'm editing my videos, I can scan left and right with my left hand while clicking things with my right hand. It just makes the editing process go a lot smoother and more efficient. And as far as the editing software that I use Adobe. So Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe After Effects, and that all comes in a suite that costs me about $50 every single month. I think that there's a package there where you can get one of those programs for maybe $20 a month, but since I use many of them, I just do the whole suite. And there was many questions about what editing software do I use, what's the best one to use when you're starting out. I cannot recommend anything but Adobe because that's all that I have ever used. There are simpler programs out there. Adobe can be very overwhelming and cumbersome to a beginner because there's so many features. It can look like you're just staring into a car engine and have no automotive knowledge whatsoever. But there's so many tutorials out there on YouTube, Google ads and things like that, that it's very easy, in my opinion, to learn and teach yourself, just as I did back in 2016. So I highly recommend Adobe. It has never let me down. How long did it take you to gain traction? I would say it didn't really feel like I was gaining traction until about 6 months in, really at the point where I started to gear more towards horror, because I did the same thing that most channels out there. The big mistake that we all make is that you start YouTube and you start doing everything. So I was doing a movie news show, a video game news show, I was doing top 5 countdowns, I was doing movie reviews, trailer reactions, and just everything. And like I said earlier, when you try to appeal to everybody, you end up appealing to nobody. And so as soon as I decided that I wanted to gear away from doing all those different things, be a more focused channel, and I went out on a limb and started to review one of my favorite slasher franchises, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, then I started to see a lot more engagement, a lot more traction in the things that I was actually passionate about doing, which was movie reviews and rankings. And so once I got focused as a creator and started putting a lot more of my time and energy into making sure that my actual reviews and rankings, the things that I wanted to do, was my best content, then I started to see my subscriber growth, then I started to see my engagement and my views grow, and by the end of my first year, I was at 1,500 subscribers. Were you ever scared about being on camera, and how did you overcome it? I wasn't necessarily scared, but I certainly I wasn't as comfortable as I am now. Like, I felt like I was acting when I was on camera. I was trying to think of how other YouTubers I watched acted when they were on camera, and how did they describe things, and how did they move, and how did they transition through things. And so the first, I'd say, 4 to 5 months of content on my channel, it's hard for me to even go back and watch because I feel kind of robotic. I used to use notes back then as well, which we'll get into that a little bit later. And I wasn't really letting my personality steer the ship. I was just trying to do what I thought YouTubers were supposed to do. And so for me, it was just doing it longer. The more videos that I did, the more comfortable, the less mechanical it felt, and the more comfortable that I felt, the more natural that I felt on camera. And then it eventually got to a point where it's among the most comfortable places that I can be. Like, there's nobody here. I'm just staring into the lens of a camera, but I feel like I'm engaging with all of you guys. I can see my audience. I can see the smiles and the groans and everything else. And it's just a lot more of a natural environment for me over time. Do you ever mess up or flub a line while recording? Absolutely. I've done it about 6 times just in the segment of this video that we've made it up to. It's impossible to avoid. I don't care who you are. I don't care how well you speak. I don't care how well you script yourself. You are going to flub once in a while. You're going to misspeak and say the wrong name, or the wrong movie title, or the wrong year, or any other detail in things that doesn't have anything to do with movies. It's impossible to avoid. The thing that is important is to not get discouraged, do not get self-conscious, do not start to give up and get frustrated and get in your own head. And also find a way to notate those places in the video so that you don't miss them in the editing. Now, that's something that I've had occasional issues with on this channel, to where I'll flub a name, or I'll cough or clear my throat or something and forget to go back and edit it back out. So it can be very embarrassing whenever you post a video with a channel this size and you get 4,000 people that view a video and there's 25 comments with a time code saying, "Hey dude, why'd you clear a loogie out of your throat in this spot?" So it does happen. I've seen people do things where, like, when they flub, they do like a little clap indicator so that the sound waves on your editing program will give you a recognizable shape and you know that you made a mistake in there. The way that I do it is, when I flub, I give myself about 4 to 5 seconds of dead air to kind of take a breath, woo-saw, and then when I'm editing, I see that little dead space and know that there was a mistake in there somewhere. That's what works for me. I'm sure there's other editing tricks as well, but absolutely, no matter how good you are, no matter how confident you are, you're gonna make mistakes. When you started out, did you think you would get along with other YouTubers? I had no reason to think that I would not. I tend to be somebody that gets along with pretty much everybody. I very rarely, if ever, have issues with people. As many jobs as I've held, I've never known anybody to strongly dislike me or to have issues with me. Granted, maybe they just didn't say anything, but I tend to be somebody that gets along with everybody, so I had no reason to believe that that would not translate over into YouTube. What I will say is that I did not expect to have such great friends that I've made on YouTube. I've met a lot of awesome people on YouTube and through YouTube that I would consider some of my best friends, even consider family. And that was not something that I certainly sought out to do or thought was possible whenever I started this channel. Now, there's some negative things that come along with that. You're definitely going to have channels that you maybe don't get along with or you don't agree with, and sometimes it's a very simple disagreement. Sometimes it turns into a public feud. And sometimes you have channels that you'll find out don't like you and you have no idea why. I mean, I have channels and pretty sizable YouTubers that I've noticed that I'm blocked on Twitter, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever spoken to you. I have no idea why you're blocking me, but it happens, you know, people will be people. Moving on to the second segment of this video, we're going to talk about growing a YouTube channel. What is the most stressful thing about growing your channel? For me personally, it's been finding ways to change and evolve over time. It's very easy to fall into the trap of being too comfortable with your success. If you have a certain pathway that you take with your shooting and your editing, if you have a certain template to your videos, if you have a certain look and style and presence, it's very hard if you're successful to start to look at those things that made you successful and decide what needs to change, what you need to adapt, what you need to evolve. And I would say about 3 months ago, that was a rut that I found myself into, and it was very difficult for me to figure out a way to get out of it. I started to look at my content, I started to look at the views being less than what I was hoping that they would be. Didn't feel like my subscribers were really changing a whole lot at a pace that I would have appreciated. And of course, going along with that, my revenue started to decline. And I'm looking at all my content and I'm looking at the quality and I'm like, well, it all looks the same as my other stuff. Like I'm in focus, I'm talking very confidently, I'm making some jokes, they're liking the jokes in the comments section. I mean, what's wrong? Doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means that sometimes you need to change some things up. So I had to take a hard look at my channel and find things that I've been doing for months, if not years, that I think have opportunity to change, to maybe engage with an audience in a new or a different way, or to service the algorithm in a little bit different or a better way. And that's another topic that we're going to get into here very soon. But that has been the most stressful thing about me growing a channel, is being confident to where I know what works in my channel and what my strengths are, but also being self-aware enough to know what to change and when to change. How do you make the YouTube algorithm notice your videos? Well, if you could find the answer to that question, you have cracked the code of YouTube. Unfortunately, that in and of itself is the struggle that YouTubers go through every single minute of every single day. And even those of us that are successful or sly enough to think that we've figured out the answer to that question, right then the answer to that question will change. So the YouTube algorithm is an ever-growing, ever-changing thing, but there are certain best practices that you can implement to try to get a hold of the algorithm, to try to have it spit your videos back out onto YouTube and add to your channel's success. The main things that you want to look for in your analytics when you do your videos is not only your views, but your watch time, which is the algorithm, the metric that shows you how much of your video your audience is watching. And there's a nice little bar graph that they'll show you exact moments that certain percentages of the audience have clicked off of your video. It will show you your high points and your low points. Typically when you do like sponsored ads, you'll see a little dip, and when you do something that's a really exciting part of your video, you might see a little bit of a spike. Going along with getting people to watch your video and watch most, if not all of your video, you also want to find ways to keep people on your channel. Now, you can do that by implementing cards throughout your video. You don't want to go too crazy, but you know, if you're talking about a topic and you've already done a video that's more relevant to that topic, you can put a little card up. Somebody can click that, move to that next video. You also have the end screen. At the end of every single one of my videos, you'll see 2 videos pop up. Sometimes it's a playlist, and I'm suggesting to you which one to click on if you enjoyed what you just watched. And so at the end of the day, it's like a constant sales pitch. You have your thumbnail, which is your advertisement for that video that you want to grab people's attention and their eyes with. That's your first sales pitch, is saying, hey, click on this video, it's something you'll enjoy. Then throughout your video, you want to sell at people that this video is fun, it's entertaining, there's valuable information here, please keep watching. And at the end of your video, you have your final sales pitch, which is, I know you just enjoyed all of that, so you'll enjoy this stuff even more or just as much as this video, so keep on going, baby. And that is a very simplified version of a way that you can get the YouTube algorithm to start working for you. Now, I will say a bit more prevalent to that question itself that I did a panel with Sean Chandler from Sean Chandler Talks About a few months ago at the Orlando MegaCon. The video is on one of his channels. I'll put the card for that up here so you can check it out. We had an hour-long, or excuse me, a 45-minute long panel where both of us discussed a lot of the things that I'm discussing here, but for the most part, it's about navigating the YouTube algorithm, how to to start and grow your channel and eventually turn it into a full-time career. And even though I have a lot of good information, Sean has almost 250,000 subscribers, so he's got a lot of valuable information that he brought to that panel as well. And he also has even more videos on the channel you're going to be going to that can answer some of those questions in a different way. Why do trailer reactions get me a lot of views, but my reviews do not? This is actually a trap that I fell into and had to dig myself out of in the early months of my channel. Now, when you first start YouTube, if you have a movie channel, one of the first things that you're going to start doing a lot is trailer reactions, because you see everybody else doing it. Every single time that there's a trailer, mostly a prevalent trailer, a big movie, a big show, something, a lot of people do trailer reactions. It's a very popular form of content on the movie side of YouTube. And yes, it's a very easy way to get views and to get subscribers. However, I have the bold claim that most of those subscribers that you get from trailer reactions are empty subs. Now, what I mean by that is that, yes, they may like your reaction, they may like you, they may like your channel as far as this trailer reaction has advertised it, and they will click that subscribe button. But in my experience, people that go onto YouTube to check out trailer reactions don't typically watch reviews and rankings and longer form content. And so you're filling out your subscriber base with all of these trailer reaction fans, and when you go to do something like a review or a ranking, not many of these people are tuning in for that. And that can seriously hurt your channel, because YouTube is going to get confused and say, why do you have 2,000 subscribers, but you're doing these videos that get like 100 views? That doesn't make any sense. This video must suck. We're not going to recommend it to people anymore. And content that's related to this is probably going to get the same treatment from us in the future, because nobody is watching it, nobody's sticking around, nobody is subscribing to your channel from that content. And so what I had to do was seriously scale back almost to the point where I stopped doing trailer reactions altogether and dump most, if not all, of my time into the content that I actually want to be known for and be successful with. And it took a few months, but after a while I started to see that discrepancy where I had high views on trailer reactions and low views on reviews. I started to see that change a bit, because I was training my audience to know that this is a review channel, this is not a reaction channel. So I may do that once in a blue moon, but this is what I'm here doing, this is what you need to click and stay for. And so you have to kind of do that. You have to retrain your audience. It doesn't mean you can't do trailer reactions, but I would seriously advise against doing that as most of your content. I would slow that down, taper that down, and put more resources into the stuff that you want to have views. How many times did you want to give up, and how did you overcome it? I've actually never had a point where I wanted to give up on YouTube. I've had times where I've been stressed and overwhelmed and overworked, and I've had to take a little bit of a break. Sometimes too long of a break, but I've had those moments, especially back when I was doing a full-time job and doing YouTube. There was a couple of times throughout the years where I would take like a whole month off and I just didn't want to do this side job of YouTube. I just needed a break. I needed to breathe for a while. I needed to decompress and get away from all of it. You'll have times like that, but I've never had a point where I wanted to quit. I mean, even before I saw it as an opportunity to go full-time and taking that opportunity, there was never a point where I was like, I'm done. I don't have any interest in doing this anymore. It's too much, or there's too much toxicity, or it's just too overwhelming and I don't want to deal with it anymore. I've never had that problem. I just needed to kind of step away and get a break from it for a while, and then I came back typically even stronger. How do you gain access to press screenings? Well, on one hand, you're asking the wrong guy, because unfortunately, I am geographically fucked when it comes to press screenings. The city that I live in is not a major movie market, and so the closest that I have is Atlanta, Georgia, which is 4 hours away, and there's not many movies that are going to come out that I'm going to be willing for an 8-hour round trip to go and see it early. It would have to be a major movie that's going to really succeed on my channel and be enough of an advance on when I can actually drop my review that it will be worth the potential extra views and extra revenue, and I have not had that yet. I have had the opportunity to see a couple of movies at press screenings near Savannah, but they've been movies that I don't typically cover. You have to get the contact information for the movie studios and the marketing rep companies that handle these screenings and try to get your name on their lists. Some places are easier than others. You're gonna have to kind of pound the pavement and knock on some doors, metaphorically, to get there. There's some, as your channel grows, that they will contact you. Eventually you will find yourself on some lists at some point if you are successful in the movie space, but there's certainly most of them that you're going to have to go out and seek yourself. Like, I do get invites to a lot of Disney press screenings in Atlanta, but I have never attended one because of the reasons that I already gave. Now, there's also screenings that you can get from streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus and things like that. Those are a very similar process, but they're certainly a little bit easier of a process because you're able to watch them from the comfort of your own home. And so it's very similar to that. You got to find the right emails and you got to find the right person to talk to. Typically, if you email somebody within the customer service or the press relations area of that company, they can at least direct you to the person that you're supposed to talk to. But it is going to depend on the size, the success of your channel, because they don't give it away to everybody. Moving on to the next chapter of this video, and we're going to talk a little bit about my YouTube process. How did you approach standing out on YouTube? Well, I started 6 years ago, and even just in 6 years, YouTube has gotten even bigger, even more, I would say, overstuffed and competitive. And so it's a very valid concern when you're starting a channel trying to figure out, how am I going to stand out? How am I going to make people watch my videos instead of the millions of others that are dropping every single minute? And there's a couple different ways that I approach that, and my approach has changed over time. When I first started out, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and so I just kind of let my personality navigate the ship. And if you have a strong or entertaining personality, that's certainly a weapon that you could have in your belt. But I also did some things that were very deliberate choices early on, where, like, a lot of my cold opens early on, I kind of turned them into comedy skits to a degree. There was some good that came with that and some bad that came with that, but it certainly made me stand out in YouTube. After a while, when I got more comfortable, I started to gear towards more longer form reviews, where I saw that most people that were reviewing movies were getting their thoughts out in 4 to 5 minutes. I started doing videos that were 15 to 20 minutes. And so for people that wanted to get a little bit more into the details of the movie and get a little bit more in depth, I was a appealing choice against those critics that were just kind of quick bullet point blurbs in 4 minutes. And I also took the approach of doing green screen so that I could have different backgrounds and do a lot more bells and whistles in the editing stage and certainly stand out that way. And there's millions of different ways that you could stand out on YouTube. That was just the ways that I decided to stand out early on. Your thumbnail style and how well you do your thumbnails is certainly something that is an approach that you need to take to stand out and not look like just a template of what somebody else does. I've seen that a million times, where you get a successful YouTuber and somebody just copies how they do their thumbnails and it's as transparent as hell. So yeah, that's kind of the way that I took the approach early on. When you had a full-time job, how did you balance family, work, and YouTube? Drugs, alcohol, and prayers. No, I'm totally kidding. It was a constant struggle. Some weeks and months were easier than others. It goes back to treating your YouTube channel like a job. Because if you're somebody that's just here for a hobby, just to have fun once in a while, it's very easy to balance all of that, because YouTube will always get the blunt end of the schedule. If you don't have enough time or energy, that's going to be the first thing that drops off. But I kind of got into the mindset of never letting YouTube be a disposable part of my life. Now, I would not put it above work or above family ever, but I always maintained a motivation to do something. Each day I wanted to do something, whether it was shoot and edit an entire video, or it was just do a thumbnail for a video that I'm planning on doing, or watch the movie that I'm planning on reviewing. I always wanted to feel like I was accomplishing something, no matter how big or small. And that was kind of the first step of balancing it. The other way that I did it was that I typically only worked from Monday to Thursday. Once in a while, I would say probably 50% of the time, I would work an overtime day on Friday, and I always had my weekends free. So unless there was family things going on, which did come up, I would use my weekends and I would batch record. So if I had a plan where I was going to do a review series of 3 or 4 different movies, or if I had a movie in a ranking or whatever, I would get an idea for 3 to 4 videos that I want to come out with in the next week or two, and I would sit down and I would record them all back to back. Because then you just have your raw footage ready, and anytime that you want to work on them, you can just chip away at the editing process, and you don't have to get out cameras and lights and change and make sure that your beard and your hair is straight, and all of that's already done. And so that was a way that I was also able to always stay efficient, was to have plenty of raw footage just waiting to be edited, so that when I got 15 minutes here, 30 minutes here, an hour, I could just be editing. And the last part of that balance was, even though I just said treat it like a job, is know your limits. You know when it's too much, know when you need a break, know when you need to scale things down. And as I was describing earlier, I had those times, plenty of times over the past 6 years, to where I needed to just get away for a bit. I need to not do a video for a week. I need to stop interacting with the comment section. I just need to focus on work and family, or one of those things. And so always keep that in mind. Treat it like a job, but even your regular job, sometimes you need personal time, right? Sometimes you need personal time off of YouTube. Do you take notes when reviewing movies? I used to when I first started, but I found that when I was reading off of bullet points or reading off of full-on written notes, that I felt too robotic. I felt too scripted. And I thrive on chaos. I thrive on going off the cuff. I thrive on just ad-libbing and winging it. That's how I succeed. That's always been my approach to success. Sometimes it bites me in the ass. It's always good to have a plan. But I like that kind of free-flowing feel that I have whenever I'm recording. I think that it comes across more genuine on camera. It's more enjoyable for me, because if I script myself out and just box myself into a template too much, I get like claustrophobic and I get frustrated. And so the only times that you will see me taking notes anymore is if I'm reviewing a TV series where I need to remember details from 9, 10, 12, 15 episodes for a season, or if I'm doing a review series on a big franchise and I'm watching a lot of the movies before I start to record. Like for Hellraiser, for example, last year, there's like, 10 Hellraiser movies? I watched all 10 of them before I recorded a single video. So for that series, I did write a few bullet point notes just to make sure that I could keep track of which movie was which, because there's about 4 or 5 of those movies in the middle that's like, I don't remember which one it is. Where did you get the background that you frequently use? I made it on Photoshop. All of my backgrounds that I use are custom made by yours truly. Now, I do get pictures off of Google, obviously. I'm not like going out and photographing these things or drawing up the artwork myself. I am manipulating other images that I find, but all of my backgrounds are all custom made. I used to have a background where it was just a generic bunch of movie posters of some of my favorite movies. I used that for a few years, grew to hate it, and so one day I just sat down on Photoshop and started kind of building this monster of background for my horror stuff. Really, it's all of my videos. I don't change it up when I'm talking about action. But I created that myself. I found like a haunted house background and I modified the look of it a bit. I took out a lot of the bright light that was coming through the window and opened it up to be transparent. And then I started adding these little Easter eggs and things from a lot of my favorite movies and changing the shadows and the opacity and things to make it blend in. I haven't added anything to it in probably a year and a half, but I do tend to, on occasion, add a little thing into the background. It's another little piece of eye candy for fans out there. But even in other review series, like when I did the Friday the 13th and I made the little Cody's Love Shack cabin background, and then I retooled that background for the Evil Dead backgrounds, the Better Call Saul ones where I use a custom background on that one as well. Any background that you find me using in my videos are all custom made by myself. Why did you take out the background music on your videos? So I used to use background music. I got to a point where I didn't like it anymore. That's the honest thing to say about it. I don't watch every single video that I do, so it took a while for me to kind of realize it, but I started either to double check on the editing, or once in a while I might watch a video that I do just to kind of see how it flows, to try to critique myself a bit. And I started noticing that when I would watch my videos, the background music would start to grit on my nerves a little bit, because it's a repetitive loop of music. Most background music is, where it's, you know, a 30-second to 2-minute loop of something and it just starts and replays over and over throughout your video. And I just found it to be repetitive to a point where it would annoy me. And I know if it annoys me, it annoys some others. And so I did a couple of videos where I took the background music out and watched it that way. And to me, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss the background music. Sometimes I'll use background music for the intros or certain pieces of my videos, but no longer do I use a background loop for the entire thing. And that was just a personal choice. I'm sure there's people out there, probably the person who answered the question, that liked the background music, that maybe preferred it being on there, but I figured there was more people that would be aggravated with the background music than there were people that would be aggravated at the absence of that background music. So to me, it wasn't a loss. It wasn't a big loss, certainly. And so I just made the creative choice to no longer use it. How do you decide on a review series? Many different ways. Typically it's one of three. Either there's a new release coming and it's a review series or a franchise that I have not reviewed yet. And so I want to do the review series to not only get my thoughts out on those movies, but also to build hype for the new release. So that's something I'll do a lot throughout the year. Also, kind of along that same vein, sometimes I'm doing a big ranking video like 31 on 31, and it might be a franchise in there or multiple franchises that I have not covered yet. And so I'll do a couple of review series that lead up to that for same thing, to kind of build up hype to that final video that's kind of the finale of the whole thing. And the third one is just sometimes it's spontaneous. Sometimes I watch a movie or I think about a movie or it's just like, that would be fun to do. Like here recently, I did the Hitcher franchise with Brian Lomax. There's no Hitcher movies coming out. There's no Hitcher rankings coming out on my channel. I just watched the Hitcher one day and I went, I love this movie. I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about the other two. Ugh. How do you deal with people that hate on you for your opinions? Comes with the territory. No matter how long you're on YouTube, the more successful, the more eyes you have on your channel, the more haters, the more trolls, the more negative people you're going to attract. It's just, you got to take the bad with the good, unfortunately. I'm somebody that can very easily ignore the vast majority of comments like that. Typically where you'll get hate in channels like mine in the movie space is you get people that are angry at the fact that you liked a movie that they did not like, or you did not like a movie that they liked. And anybody that takes a difference of opinion on art as some kind of a personal insult is a simple and weak-minded, insecure child. And once you look at those people in the comment section as exactly that, it is very easy to move on and not give a single fuck about anything that they think or anything that they say. Much like if a 7-year-old knocked on my door and I opened it and they said, "Hey dude, you suck." Well, your mother sucked me in high school, so have a nice day. Does it get hard to find topics to discuss without exhausting certain subjects? Oh my God, yes. When you're somebody that does rankings a lot, like I do on my channel, it is very hard sometimes to find new topics, new subjects to do in ranking videos because there's a lot of overlap. For example, I have already done a couple different videos in regards to like my favorite horror movies of all time or my favorite franchises of all time. And here very soon I'm going to be doing a video on my top 80s horror movies. Well, a lot of people that already watch my channel know what the answer is going to be for at least the top 3 or 4 of those. So sometimes it does get frustrating where you find a cool topic, but you're like, ugh, but I'm going to have to talk about the same movies. I'm going to have to talk about the same number one. I'm going to have to talk about the same actors, the same characters. And so it does get a little tiresome sometimes. I've been able to navigate it pretty well. But there is sometimes where I have a topic that I need to discuss or a topic that my patrons have chosen where I'm like, oh, I've kind of already done that video. Fuck. And finally, why don't you feature your wife and kids in your videos anymore? It hasn't necessarily been like a conscious decision. It's not like I exclude them from being in it. I think that I'm always just in work mode to where I never think to include them if it is a movie that they can even be included in. The other side of it, though, is that as I've grown on YouTube, the less desire I have to have them exposed like that on my channel because people are assholes. Just 2 questions ago, how do you deal with haters? I can deal with haters just fine. When they're making fun of me, when they're saying very disgusting things about me, when they're making fun of my physical appearance or whatever it may be, it's very easy for me to ignore that. You take that and you apply it to my wife or my children, and you get a very different reaction out of me, and I just don't even want to feel like, I just don't feel like dealing with that. You know, it's unfortunate that I have to do that. It's unfortunate that that is the reality. But I just know that my response, my emotional response and my typed response is not going to be very healthy. And so I just don't feel the need to really do that. Now on to the fun one, making money on YouTube. How long did it take for you to actually see a decent profit from ad revenue? Probably inside of 2 years. I think it was 9 months before I saw my first paycheck from YouTube, which was $100. That's your initial pay cap, or at least it was when I started. They won't give you a dime until you reach that $100 cap. So when I got my first check from YouTube, it was a big, exciting moment. It was short-lived because $100 does not go very far in today's world, especially when you got a wife and kids. But yeah, I didn't get paid until my first 9 months, and it was probably at least 2 years before I started to get regular paychecks that actually mattered. You know, regular paychecks where it was a legit side income that was valuable, that was worth me putting the time and the effort that I was continuing to increase putting into the channel, because that revenue side of things was substantially getting better. Now, one thing I will say that was not a part of any question is that ad revenue on YouTube is very inconsistent. That is the most difficult thing about being a full-time YouTuber, is that you never really know what your paycheck is going to be. A lot of different factors. You know, you got your views, you got your watch time, you have how many ads you have on each video, you have the actual budget that YouTube has regarding ad revenue that changes from month to month, which is the thing that I did not ever pay attention to until this was my only source of income. So there was a few months there at the beginning of the year where, you know, people aren't buying things, people aren't really paying attention to ads as much, where revenue dipped quite a bit, almost in half. That was a bit shocking. And so no matter how successful you are on YouTube, ad revenue is something that is an ever-changing monster. What other revenue streams do you have aside from ad revenue? I have a couple. So Patreon is my largest revenue stream outside of ad revenue. For a long time in my YouTube career, that was my biggest revenue stream. I was getting more money from Patreon than I was getting from the ad revenue. That has since changed with the growth of my channel. But for a lot of you that are in that the first couple of years, that's probably going to be the case. If you have a dedicated fan base that will appreciate Patreon, you might end up getting more financial support from them than you do from YouTube itself. So I have, of course, that, and within YouTube, there's also super chats, and here added very recently, super thanks, which are essentially channel donations. Like when you do a live stream, you have the super chat option to where you can pay and donate a certain amount of money to make your comment pop up and stay up longer. Typically, those are the comments that I will read during my Q&As, because I only have enough time to read those, because I get a very generous amount of super chats when I typically go live. My viewers are awesome when it comes to that. Super thanks is something that's very new. You can do those on any videos, whether they're live streams or just edited videos that are uploaded, and that's just a straight up donation, just saying thanks. Oh, they call them super thanks. I also have, of course, sponsorships, and I'll talk more about that here shortly. You have t-shirt sales, which I don't plug very often, but I do get a little bit of money off of that. I know people that get a lot of money for using Amazon links. I have not had any success with that. There's also some other ways out there, affiliate links and things of that nature, that you can put in your video, and products that you can promote throughout your videos and get some revenue that way. There's many different ways, many endless different ways to make money out there, not just on YouTube, but just in general. It is a crazy time to be alive. How do you use copyrighted material and not get copyright claims or strikes? I get this question a lot, and unfortunately, it shouldn't be the way that it is. There is a thing called fair use out there, and if you are using copyrighted material for review or commentary purposes and you modify said content, you are supposed to be protected underneath this fair use doctrine and not have the legal, these companies, these studios should not have the legal ability to be able to claim your content. Unfortunately, fair use is all but useless. You know, fair useless is a better name for it. Very, very, very rarely does any studio or any copyright company recognize the fair use doctrine. And so you have a lot of YouTubers of many different sizes that constantly bitch about the copyright system and the way that YouTube has historically been very little help. They've made little incremental changes and incremental improvements. It feels like they move at a snail's pace when it comes to actually helping their content creators with this issue, but they do make changes here and there. The way that I have been able to navigate the copyright claims, and I've never gotten a strike, is I tend to limit how much copyrighted material I use. I never use music. Music is the fastest and the easiest thing that will get you copyright claimed and lose all revenue on your video. Trailers that use popular songs really suck because they'll screw you in an instant. But even movie clips, it could be 5 seconds long, and if it's a song that's popular, that's prevalent in that clip, they can detect that very quickly. Oftentimes before you even click publish on your video, it will be detected. But with that bearing in mind, even if you just do video clips and trailer clips that don't have music in them, I always limit my clips to try to be less than 10 seconds. And I've found since that I have done that, since I have started using shorter clips, that I have had very, very few copyright claims. I used to get them all the time, and they were always for clips that were longer than 15 seconds. I used to have a habit where I would talk about a scene in a movie, and I would try to follow that up by having most of the best part of that scene right afterwards in my review. And oftentimes I would find them get copyright claimed years later. And that really sucks when you have a video that you've done all this work in and you got a lot of views and revenue, and then a year or months after you've published it, somebody copyright claims it, and so there's really nothing you can do about it. If you get copyright claimed on a brand new video, it's very easy to take that video down, edit that part that got copyright claimed, and re-upload it. But if it's an older video, you're pretty much screwed. That video now gets no money for you and gets all the money for them. So I keep my clips consolidated. I try not to use too many of them. And if you do not have a rush to put the video out, it's best to upload it and leave it unlisted for a while. And I've noticed that YouTube has gotten a lot better about finding these things quicker. So typically if you have something that's going to get copyright claimed, in my experience, they will find it during the upload stage, and there hasn't been any or very little experience for me lately where I've uploaded a video and it takes hours or days for them to detect something. How do you set up deals with sponsors? Well, either you contact them or they contact you. It goes back to the same thing I was talking about in regards to getting access to press screeners. Sometimes you got to pound the pavement a little bit. So I have done quite a few times where I have looked at a company that I either am a fan of or I have seen other YouTubers have sponsorships with them, and I sent an email to their customer service or their press relations or whatever department, giving them my YouTube link, giving them a brief rundown of my demographics, and saying, like, I think we could succeed on a sponsorship together. And I have about a 50% success rate with that. A lot of companies I've had that have enjoyed that, have been excited, and we've gotten to do a sponsorship with each other. And I've had some companies that have either not messaged me back or have messaged me back saying, hey, we're not looking for sponsorships right now. Typically, those are companies that are looking for channels that typically operate in the 300 to 500K views per video range, and I'm not anywhere near that. So you email them, hopefully get a response back. But I've had much more success and much more frequency with companies actually emailing me. That's why it's important to have a business email on your YouTube page. There's a link that you can set up in your YouTube studio, and they will find you through that. So most of my sponsorships have emailed me and reached out to me. You will get those as you get more successful on YouTube. There's also some third-party companies out there, one that I started working with very recently that will kind of be that middleman for you. You talk with them about kind of a going rate and the type of sponsorships that you want to do, and they will reach out to companies and get feedback and get deals and then contact you and get a yes or no on them. And every sponsorship is different. Sometimes, of course, the money that you get paid is different. That's something that you negotiate individually with each one. Sometimes they want you to talk for a minute. Sometimes they want you to talk for 2 minutes. Sometimes they let you do the whole thing however you want. Sometimes they give you very strict guidelines and bullet points that you have to read almost word for word. Sometimes it's for one video, sometimes it's for multiple videos. So every sponsorship is different. The thing to keep in mind for a lot of people that don't understand why YouTubers take sponsorships, especially when you're in a position like me where this is your career, this is your sole source of income, sponsorships are very beneficial in many different ways. Number one, of course, is money. You get paid to talk about a brand or a product for 2 minutes, and the more successful your channel is, the more money that you can ask for. And so that's a very great way to make income on YouTube. But I like the added bonus that I typically only talk about companies or services or products that I like. I have integrity that way. So I have these companies, these discounts, these little free trials and things that I like being able to share with everybody. There's like HelloFresh and these other things where I can get you a free month or a free trial, whatever it is. And so to me, it's mutually beneficial. I get paid for my time and you guys get access to free stuff, free months, free trials, or discounts. And I just think it's awesome all around. Anybody that has a problem with that, I think you're just a hater. Does it help your channel when I like the video even if I don't watch it? Thank you for asking this question. And no, no, it does not help my channel. I've actually blown some family members' minds by talking about this. And it's kind of an underknown fact when it comes to YouTube. The like and dislike system is all but useless for the content creator. That is for the benefit of you and your YouTube recommends. Essentially, when you like or dislike a video, all that you're doing is telling YouTube that you like this type of content or you don't like this type of content. If you like that video, you're going to get recommended more videos from that creator and more videos like it. If you dislike it, you're going to get less recommends from that creator or videos like it. And it doesn't affect the success of the video at all. YouTube sees the thumbs up as exactly the same thing as a thumbs down. It is purely engagement. You clicked a button on the video. That's what YouTube wants you to do. They want you to interact with their website in any way, shape, or form by liking or commenting or whatever. So it only is a thing that matters for you and the YouTube algorithm on your end. Does nothing for my video. That's what's hilarious about the douchebags out there that think that they're being cute when they dislike and downvote your video. It makes no difference. You actually helped my video because YouTube just sees it as engagement. So even if you disliked it, YouTube's like, hey, somebody watched your video and clicked a button. Good on you. And so when you like a video that you're not watching, the like means nothing, but the fact that you didn't watch the video will actually hurt the video. Not that one person doing it is going to hurt it all that much. It's very minuscule, but this is a very common misconception with viewers on YouTube. All YouTube cares about when you click on the video is how long you watched it. So if you click on a video and you stay just long enough to like it and leave a comment that says good job and then you click off and go watch something else, you actually hurt the channel and the video more than you actually helped it. So by all means, I appreciate it. I know it comes from a good place. I know it comes from a place of thinking that it was a good thing and it comes from good intentions. But if I put out a video that you are genuinely not interested in, no hard feelings whatsoever, feel free not to click on that video. And now on to the final chapter, we have full-time YouTuber. So as you guys know, as I stated in the beginning, I am coming up on about a year of being a full-time YouTuber, and it's a very different process than being a part-time or a hobby YouTuber. So wanted to answer some questions that are prevalent just to that side, and hopefully a lot of you guys that ask those questions that have up-and-coming channels at some point will be able to use this information. What was the factor that made you decide to quit your day job and pursue YouTube full-time? Well, most of the factors were prevalent to how horrible my job was and much less so how successful I thought that I was on YouTube. If you had asked me 2 months before I put in my notice and became a full-time YouTuber, if I had plans to become a full-time YouTuber, I would have told you no. I would have told you that there's way too much unpredictable when it comes to YouTube's revenue and YouTube's policies. They could take away ad revenue tomorrow. They could seriously reduce it tomorrow. I would never want to be in a position where that's my only source of income. But unfortunately, I was in a place where the job that I had been working at for over 3 years had wore down on my psyche so much that I was miserable every single day of the week, even the weekend, because I was counting down to when I had to go back. I would wake up depressed. I would go to bed angry that I had to go back the next day. It was just not a good experience. It was a very toxic work environment. People were overworked left and right. There was nobody who cared that could do anything about it. And I mean, I could rant for hours on that job, so I'll try to wrap that up. But it was all because of how miserable my job was. And so I was at a point where I was very successful for being a part-time YouTuber, to where I just looked at the data and said, okay, I'm taking a leap here. I'm taking a big risk. I never would have thought that I'm doing this, but with the amount of success that I have, only being able to put this much time and attention into my YouTube channel, what could I achieve if I'm able to put all of my time into it? If I'm able to work it like a job, if I'm able to put 8 to 10 hours a day on it some days, or even if I don't put that much time into it, if I could just work on YouTube a couple days a week and use the other free days to do things that I want to do, like spend time with my family or work on things around the house, things that I used to never have the time or the energy to do. And so it was strictly a mental health decision. I was at the point where, I don't want to go too far with it, but I was at the point where I was actually having like almost borderline suicidal thoughts, because it was just like my day-to-day life is so fucking miserable. I feel like I'm on this treadmill of misery. I don't know how to get out of this. And so it just took me kind of accepting that there is ways to get out of it, talking to some people, coworkers, family, friends, my wife, and coming to some very reasonable expectations for what I could do with YouTube, coming to some very hard truths about the nature of what my life was like when I was doing all of it, and eventually just decided that, you know what, there's nothing to lose here. I can leave this job. There's no way in hell I'm staying with this job for 5, 10, 15 years, so there's no loss on that end. I need to get the fuck away from that place as soon as possible. But even if the YouTube thing doesn't work out, I can always go out and get another job. I have never had a problem finding work. I have a very good work background. I have very good references. And so I just looked at it realistically and said, okay, let me give this a shot. Maybe I'll succeed. Maybe it'll be the best thing ever and I can do this and live the dream. Maybe I'm biting off more than I can chew and I'll just go out and get another job in 6 months or a year. And luckily, aside from some serious adjustments that I've had to make and a couple of down months with the YouTube revenue, I have been very successful thus far as a full-time YouTuber and full steam ahead. Does making videos ever stop being fun and become work? Yep. Absolutely. Luckily, I have made some very good decisions as far as how I've built out my channel to where I have a lot of wiggle room. I have a lot of freedom to do a lot of different type of content. And so I have a much easier time navigating that than I imagine some YouTubers do that get really specific with their niche. Like, I focus on horror, but I also have always talked about the other genres, so I have freedom there. But also, even though I focus on horror, I have a lot of success with older films and older review series. And so I'm not sitting around waiting for the next new release. I can go talk about franchises and movies from the 80s and the 70s and the 90s, and I can keep on trucking. I always have something I can talk about. And so I'm able to keep it more fun than work. But there is certainly times, sometimes it's just your mood, sometimes it's just your energy level, sometimes it's like what we were talking about earlier with exhausting a subject, sometimes it's a sponsored video that's very specific and you got to do something that they think is a good topic and it's not necessarily something that you created in your head. There's a lot of different ways that YouTube can become work and not be as fun anymore. But luckily, for the most part, I keep a very healthy balance. I would say it's about 85% fun and 15% work for me most times. How much has YouTube affected your passion for TV and film? Well, it's affected it in positive ways and in negative ways, unfortunately. On one end, I think that my love for film, my appreciation for film, my engagement with film has done nothing but grow. because I go a lot more in depth with it, and it's much more of a richer experience for me than it is for your average moviegoer that can go watch a movie and then just, that was 2 hours of entertainment for them. For me, it's something deeper. You know, I discuss it more, I analyze it, I kind of comb through it. Sometimes I'm doing 2, 3, 4 videos on a movie, and so I'm really diving into these things that I love and exploring it a lot deeper than most people. And that's the good side of it. The negative side of it is kind of going back to where it becomes work, is that movies, you know, watching movies, watching TV, even video games to a degree, used to be kind of my escape. You know, that was my peace time. I'm off work, I've spent time with the family, now it's time to wind down and watch a good movie, and I was able just to have that enjoyment of, I'm relaxing and watching a good movie. Nowadays, I always have a side of my brain that's working. So if I'm watching something, I'm deciding if I want to review it, I'm formulating some of my thoughts, thinking of some other videos that I can do in relation to this. Or if I have no plans on reviewing that, there's a side of my brain that's going, should I be watching this movie right now that I've seen 75 times and I've already reviewed? Or should I be watching something that I can use for next week's video? Should I be working right now? And so that's the negative side of it, is that it does kind of turn your hobby, it turns your escape into work to a certain degree. The other side of it, which isn't nearly as prevalent, but it certainly does happen, is that sometimes the negative interactions that you have on YouTube can affect your passion for certain movies, certain TV shows. It shouldn't be that way, but it's impossible to not have that emotional or mental reaction sometimes. Like one that always pops up on my channel is the Halloween fandom. Not all of them, just the crazy ones. There has certainly been a bit of a diminish on my love for some movies in that franchise just because of the way that people have interacted with me and treated me in regards to how I view that film. So that is another side that can unfortunately negatively affect your passion. Are there any regrets with going full-time on YouTube? No, not really. I love the fact that I made that decision. I love the fact that I took the risk, took the leap. So far, it's been stressful. It's been stressful navigating how to be self-employed, how to schedule yourself out, keep yourself accountable, how to figure out how to do taxes and what to deduct, and how to navigate getting 1 paycheck a month instead of what I used to get 4 a month, how to figure out ways to get more revenue, and having to, you know, put a lot of work into something that you might not necessarily get the same return back. There's a lot of different elements to it that have been difficult. Even just staying home all the time, working from home, and not having as much of a freedom or an escape from my house has certainly been times where it's been difficult. It's been a little mentally, emotionally straining on me to just not be able to leave the house every day. So there's a lot of things that come with it that have been an adjustment. Some of them I'm still adjusting to. Some of them I probably will always be adjusting to. But I don't regret for a second making that decision, because I think back to how miserable I was before. And even though I might have a bad day or a stressful day, or, you know, there might be some more difficulties financially with this one source of income back instead of a full-time job and YouTube, the mental health alone is worth all of that. And the final question is, if you were to start over, what would you do differently? Well, the first thing that I would have done is start much earlier, because it would have been much easier to start a very prevalent movie channel back in 2008, 2007 than it was trying to start it in 2016. But with that being said, if I was to go back to the same day that I started and do some things differently, I would follow a lot of the things that I have told you guys throughout this video. I would have hammered in a niche immediately. I would have focused a lot more on making sure that I'm doing the right videos, not dumping 8-9 hours into a video that maybe 5 people will watch. I would have been a lot more disciplined about consistency and frequency. I would have been a lot more focused on what I was actually reviewing and talking about on my channel, instead of trying to do everything, just doing a few things really good. I would have sought out different revenue streams and sought out things like press screenings and sponsors a lot earlier. Just a lot of the things that I've had to learn the hard way with doing YouTube and navigating the ever-changing world of being a YouTuber. I would do a lot of that the right way first, instead of the wrong way for a long time, and then finding out it was in fact the wrong way. Hindsight's 20/20, right? That's always a rule that you could follow in anything. YouTube is of no exception. But hopefully a lot of things in this video were good answers to a lot of your guys' awesome questions that were hopefully giving you a little bit more confidence or a little bit more clarity in the path of becoming a YouTuber. And if this helped you guys, please let me know in the comment section down below what helped you, or what thing did I crack that you've been wondering for a long time. Give me some feedback, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, because I certainly enjoyed it myself. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please click over here to see the Fan Expo panel that me and Sean Chandler did. And I'm also gonna put a playlist up here of my 2022 movie reviews if you actually wanna see the content that I do every day on this channel, rather than just talking about YouTube itself. Thank you for watching, and please like and share and hit that subscribe button. And always remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.